I'm Dana Hooper, Executive Director of Life Services Alternatives. We're a nonprofit organization whose mission is focused on providing exceptional community living and programs for adults with disabilities. I have the pleasure today of introducing Trudy Grable, who will speak to us about supported living services. Trudy is a parent of a young woman with developmental disabilities. She's an expert and advocate on person-centered planning. She has founded her own supported living agency. She's also has a long and illustrious career at Parents Helping Parents, and recently founded the BFF Project, which is geared towards helping those with DD create friendships. And without further ado, here's Trudy.
Hi, everybody. I'm thrilled to see the interest in this supported living service that is gaining traction. There's on your slide, on your first slide, is the definition of supported living services, which really encompasses many other services. Are you guys seeing my screen, or am I only seeing my screen?
Yes, we're seeing it.
Thank you.
Oh, actually, we're just seeing you right now, not your screen.
Okay, let me fix that. All right, now you should be seeing my slideshow. Now you should be able to read the definition.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to set my my timer here so I don't go over my time. And so it is going to go into your IPP. So I'm going to give you some steps later about what you would do to get this service into your IPP. But supported living is really where somebody lives in their own home. It can be a rented apartment. It can be a home that the family owns. It can be a home that the person owns. And so they live either on their own with the supports they need, or they live with other people. So they may want to have a roommate. They may have staff who are roommates as well. So we're going to get into the weeds on this now. It's intended to encompass many different aspects of life. So the person is in the middle. They have support staff. They have community members that value them. And they have family and friends. And not everybody continues to have family as they get older, because we're dying off. I'm a parent too. I know that's going to happen one day. But whoever is present who's not a paid person is going to fall under family and friends, people who maybe are in a community of faith. They may be part of the community. And then, of course, the people who are supporting them in their home through either supported living or in-home support services who are paid are support staff. Within that, we are to provide for people the basic needs of emotional and physical safety. We're to help them be a valued member of the community, and we want to provide what's important to them while keeping them safe and healthy. So when you hear people talking about person-centered and community and important to, it's not without taking into account that person's health and safety. So I want you to remember that as you're learning about person-centered approaches. And that is something that has always been a part of supported living, is that they use person-centered approaches. And the spirit of supported living services, and I'm going to use SLS as just the acronym for that now, is that they have control in their daily lives. And that doesn't mean they have control over, the television channel. It means that if they want to change their mind about something, they can, even if it's on the schedule. So how many of you have ever changed your mind about something you were going to do? You got up and you said, man, I'm going to really I'm going to polish the house today and it's going to be great. And then something shiny catches your eye or some TV show and you go, yeah, the house will wait. We all do that in our lives. Yet people who use services are generally put on a schedule, and it is somebody's business to make sure they stay on that schedule, even if they decided they don't want to do it anymore. That's the kind of daily control that people can have in their lives in supported living. It also is meaningful choice, and that doesn't mean do you want the red cup or the blue cup. That means I have a choice about how I spend my time. I have a choice about who I spend it with. I have a choice about what I want for dinner, even though the menu may say something else. Or I want to go get a burger instead of have that pot roast that's in the oven. And it also is where I'm going to live and with whom. It doesn't mean they can afford to live in the exact place that they want, because we know a lot of our kids live on very minimal financial situations, and not everyone is in a position to help their son or daughter financially. So it has to be within the range of what's available to them. And with whom they want to live, they should be having a say about who their roommates are going to be and about who's going to have a key to their home. These are all things in the service design that are required through the regional center when you're setting up a supported living environment. So the other things that supported living may include is, and it's going to depend on how the service design is written and approved by the regional center, but these are things that may be included, is helping find a home and moving into that home, helping to furnish that home, choosing their household folks that are going to be in the house all the time with them, being able to be out in the community to, if somebody wants to go to a place of worship on Sunday and Wednesday, somebody takes them there. Supported living actually provides more flexibility than some other living settings because it's generally a one-to-one staffing ratio, unless you have two clients living in the house where both clients have to have the same supported living service provider now, and there's compensation for that when you have only one staff. So that may throw a little wrench in it, but it's very doable for people. The other thing is the supported living agency may manage or assist in their financial management and any other supports they might need. So shopping, household, cleaning, all of that. Everything that they need to live in their own home is going to be provided from a person perspective and a situation perspective. This is my beautiful daughter and her handsome boyfriend, John, by the way, and she has that great smile, usually when she's not with me. I don't get to see that often, but she's awfully cute. And what we want to do in supported living, as we do in anyone's life, is really help them have relationships that matter to them. We want them to be a fully contributing member to their community and be valued by their community. And you see Lauren watering the plants over at the skilled nursing facility at the bottom. And she's working at Raft in the other picture. Of course, none of that's happening right now. So we have to consider that with all of the services that people are receiving. And they should be working toward their long range personal goals, not the goals that other people have chosen for them, but something that's based on where they want to be in their life and incorporate that into all of the goals that are set for them. So what I've learned about promising practices in supported living is that, choice is honored while we're maintaining health and safety. And I'm going to talk more about that and how we connect those two things in a few minutes. It's not viewed as babysitting. If it's viewed as babysitting, it's not honoring that person's individuality, or they get the perspective of, we're going to control your life, but the person needs to be in control of their life. And again, when it's healthy and safe, right? We need to provide a lot of that information for people. And that friendships are developed and maintained because our staff that come and work with our sons and daughters, they're going to leave someday. And they're generally not going to look back. And so we need people in their lives, either in the community, as friends, as neighbors, in your place of worship, where they're going to stay connected even when the staff are coming and going. And paid people are not friends. Let me just say that again. If you're getting paid to be with someone, you are not their friend. You are somebody who is paid to be with them. Friendship is where people are coming together over common interest, who will sit there and watch the same Disney movie with you every time they see you, and they're not getting paid to be with you. So we want to make sure that they have ongoing friendships. And I truly believe that families have to be active and involved to the extent that they're able. They should be part of the training team. And you know more about your son or daughter than anybody who they just hired off of Craigslist. And it doesn't mean that they don't get training, but you're going to know the ins and outs. And it's important for us as families to document and to share that information so people can do a good job the first time of supporting our sons and daughters. And then I really like to promote natural transitions. And let me give you an example of what that means. When Lauren first went into supported living, she would come and spend the weekend with me. And then on Sunday, and I don't even know who came up with this, but it just seemed appropriate, that she would go home Sunday night and get ready for her next school day, because I think she was in post-secondary then. And it was a struggle. She wanted to stay home. She wanted to stay in the family home and stay with me. There were some issues about, separation. It was difficult for both of us. And we go, no, it's time for you to go home. And wow, it turned out to be a power struggle and a nightmare. And finally, I was like, ding, I had this epiphany of, well, why doesn't she stay the night on Sunday and they pick her up in the morning? And then she goes back to her house that afternoon, which was a natural transition. And it was far less trauma for her, for us, and it worked out really well. So I encourage you to look at those natural transitions when your child is moving out of the home. Need a sip of water. So if you want supported living, and we'll talk a little bit more about it, but here's your to-do list. And this is in one of the handouts as well that you'll find on the LSA website. Get it in the IPP. The IPP is your most powerful tool for getting the service your son or daughter needs. And so you need to have it in the IPP. Whenever you say, I think that's the service I want to choose. I had it in the IPP long before Lauren went into supported living. So when we were ready, I was just able to call and say, we're ready. And no amendment to the IPP was needed. So talk to your service coordinator, get it in there. In-home support services, which we commonly refer to as IHSS, needs to be explored. And so you need to apply, and you need to gain the many hours that are available if your child is eligible and meets the requirements. The maximum is 283 hours a month if your child's considered severely impacted. Non-severe is 195 a month, and all of that's based on your activities of daily living. So if they need a lot of support, like 20 hours a week, they may be eligible for the max at 283. If they need only 5 hours a week of IHSS, they're not going to be considered for that number. They're going to be considered for up to 195 hours. And it can take a while to get this done, especially now. So if you need to explore that, I would not delay. You need to find a place for them to live. That's usually the biggest hitch, especially here in Santa Clara County, right? It's very expensive. It's hard to find affordable housing. You can connect with Housing Choices Coalition, which is also on the handout list, and see if you can't get on a wait list, find out what affordable housing is available. And then if you want a roommate, identify that person, maybe have them, do some sleepovers and see how it goes. And, Lauren had wanted to move in with her boyfriend. So I said, why don't we have him spend the night on Friday nights at your house and see how it goes. And so that worked out well. She's decided to remain living alone, but, we providing them the opportunities to do those things. You wouldn't want to just move in with somebody as an adult that you never met before. In my opinion, I wouldn't, although it could work out better. Okay, so how is it funded? This is really important because a lot of people assume that regional center is going to fund the home, but they're not. It's not like residential care. They are going to fund the staffing and an administrative rate. So they will fund sleep hours, which is reduced from the daytime hours. They will staff mileage for transportation. And that's one of the nice things about supported living is they kind of have their own Uber. And they'll also fund an administration fee for the agency. People are not making big bucks off providing supported living. You need funding to start it up to be able to cover payroll for 6 weeks. So when you think about your child and accessing some of these services, don't think they're making big bucks off your child. I've heard that from families before. It is a very minimal amount of gain for the agencies. And the regional center may also be funding the day services and any other services that the person receives, but it's not going to fund the brick and mortar home in which a person lives. It's also not going to pay for your utilities. So SSI has to fund those, right? Or we'll talk about that in a minute too. In-home support services, it's a generic resource. And as we know, regional center is the payer of last resort. So that's why you have to explore in-home support services first. And then of course, there's the natural, which kind of means free supports that somebody might have in their life. It might be family, it might be, they're at church a couple of hours on Sunday, so there's no staff. And any other places, siblings where they might be gaining support where no one's getting paid, basically. So in-home support services, I already went over this a little bit, but there is a in-home support service webinar, what's a kind of I'm just talking to people, about how to apply. And it's in multiple languages. It's in English, Spanish, Mandarin, and Vietnamese. So you can go to that link and look at it. If you don't know where to find the link later, just go to PHP's website and look at e-learning. So here's the deal. You can help your child financially in their home when they're in supported living. But if you help them, it may result in a reduction of their SSI. And there's a link to learn more about that. We also have an SSI training that would go over that. CalFresh is now available. That's going to help offset the food costs. And there's a link for you to apply if you haven't already. And then there's CalAble, which can help pay for rent and utilities and their cell phone and their internet connection and all of that without affecting their SSI amount. This is always a big question with supported living. So summary, Regional Center does not fund any type of housing, utilities, or food for supported living. It funds the people. And so I spent a little time yesterday getting prepared. And these are actually ads off Craigslist to apply to work in supported living with people with intellectual disabilities or developmental disabilities or autism. So preferred is stated a lot in here, but it's a pretty minimal qualification. So why do I bring this up? Because your child is going to be with this person, most likely alone. So there's a lot of power that that person can have over another person. And we know that when people are trying to control someone else, it doesn't go well for the controller, especially with our kids. They tend to react negatively to being controlled. And so I think it's critical that we make sure that they receive the training so they don't end up tearing their hair out. They need to understand who our child is, how they respond, what are the triggers, what are we going to do to help them have better days instead of being frustrated all the time. And, you know, when you understand the person you're supporting, you're less frustrated, and our children are less frustrated. So we need to teach empathy, patience, and they need to have skills that are developed. And a lot of that information has to come from you because you have it. So they need knowledge of what our son or daughter's needs are. They need to know what their health status is, what really works for them in order to get them to what's important for them. And so we can provide a lot of support, and we need to capture that data while we still can, you know, if we're getting older. So we want to capture that and be able to have it continue to be built upon. What I really like in supported living, in what I do with our team, is I connect their goals, their employee goals, to what's important to and important for my daughter. So in goals for one of our staff, because it's the timing, is that make sure that she connects with her friends at least twice a week. Whether it's online, whether it's going out to dinner with her friends, whether it's now Zoom, right, or telephone. So whatever it takes to make sure that those connections are maintained. That they continue to learn about our person and capture what they've learned. If you learn something, let's say you're a staff person and you learn something that works really, really well, and you don't share that with others, and then you leave the agency, where did that great information go about how to help your son or daughter have a better day? We want to make sure that that information is captured and shared with the other staff. So what we really need is people with knowledge who really care about our sons and daughters. And they learn about what's the vision for this person? What is the ultimate vision? What do we want to have in this person's life? What's important to them? What makes for a great day for them? What ruins their day? We need to have them gain insight and learn how to communicate. Am I flashing? Is my communication coming through all right?
Still coming through clear.
Okay, because my little buttons are flashing. All right, and we need to have them understand how our sons and daughters communicate. We also need to have them understand how to keep them healthy and safe while not controlling them and preventing them from having what's important to them. So I want you in the chat to just, I'm going to assume that you want your child healthy and safe, because I think we all want that. for our sons and daughters. But I want you to shoot off in chat. If you had a vision for your son or daughter, let's say 20 years from now, what would you want them to have or be? So go ahead and shoot those off in chat. Surrounded by friends, a fulfilling life, living happily with a circle of supportive friends, living in a community of caring and compassionate people, strong social network, lots of, oh my God, they're just flooding in now. Okay. It's, you know, what I'm seeing and the full picture of this is safe, happy, and community. A circle of support of people. And some nice clothing. Yeah, everybody should have some nice clothing. Okay, involved with their family members and enjoying their friendships. Movie night at home with popcorn, having a job she loves, good friends. So thank you for all those thoughts. And I kind of thought as a parent, okay, Jerry, one more. We are probably dead and she would need to, one, live on her own, financially okay, circle of friends, job she enjoys, a reason to get up every day. God, I love that. Feeling integral part of the community, friends, meaningful employment. So community is huge, and community is huge in supported living. So it's a great service for people who want those things in their lives, but they're not going to just happen. You're going to have to be involved in this process. So person-centered planning and thinking and approaches have been woven into supported living since the beginning. And I know I said that earlier. For those of you who have been to my PCT trainings or the one-page description trainings, you know that on the left side of this screen is what really brings happiness into people's lives. Contentment, comfort, satisfaction, feeling fulfilled. This is how we define what's important to us as human beings. And on the right is health and safety and community involvement. So part of our job is also to help our centers, or if you're a supported living agency, to help the client be a valued member of the community. Now, sometimes you have to look at, I've really got to get this person to program on time. So how can I do that? And I'll give one of the examples that you may have heard before, but it's so easy that anyone could do it. If I had a meeting and I had to be there on time and I'm driving my daughter to her program, there's a 7-Eleven on the corner. And I'd say, listen, you know, if there's time, we'll stop at 7-Eleven and we'll get a soda on the way to program for you to have with your lunch. And I'd be waiting for her normally. She's out the door on the porch waiting for me to leave. And that's how you connect important two for important four. It's important for her to be on time and be valued by her community. I used what was important to her, not as a threat, but as a motivator. If we have time, we're going to do this. Or however you're going to form that to work with your son or daughter. Notice I didn't say, unless we're there on time, we're not stopping at 7-Eleven. So a lot of it is how you talk, how you speak to your son or daughter. And all these classes that I do really help with that. So here's how I capture some of the information so that it's a visual for people who support her in her supported living environment all the time. So on the left, I've got what's important to her. And on the right, I've got how to support her in a way that works for her. And in the center, a beautiful picture. That's not Lauren, obviously. And then below that, what people like and admire about her. And so people get a good idea about who this person is. And, you know, people seem to be compelled to read them when they're posted somewhere, and that helps them have a better connection. So there's other things in supported living for people who don't use words or need a lot of organization to be able to communicate. And so these are some of the devices that you can explore to see what works. There's a link to other communication devices. And of course, PHP has their Assistive Technology Center that you can always call and get some suggestions for supporting people who don't use words or may use words but not always say what they mean. And so we really need to give our sons and daughters a voice. If you want to explore how to create one of those, I'll be doing a presentation or a workshop actually on June 10th via Zoom through PHP. I put the link up there so you can join us. And we only have a couple more minutes. So what I'm going to tell you a little bit about is the BFF project. I launched this program about 4 or 5 years ago in an effort to help people find the ability to have an environment to make friends based on similar interests and continued exposure. We promoted them exchanging phone numbers and email addresses if they chose to. I can tell you Lawrence Shirley added to her friendship pool through the BFF project. And now we're doing it online, and we're doing it once a week instead of once a month. It's still going strong, and it's just growing. So I just go to PHP's website and search for BFF. It'll pop up, and we hope to see some of your sons and daughters there in the future. And I think I used up all my time. So thank you. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I think Dia's coming back.
Yes, and I'm going to kick it over to our executive director. Thank you so much, Trudy, for your time.
My pleasure.
Yes, thank you, Trudy. One of the things that we would love to have from all of you is your thoughts and ideas about future webinars. So please get back to us with any thoughts that you might have. You know, this is a listing of webinar topics that, you know, might be of some interest in getting that input. We're just thankful to be able to offer this resource to you, and we appreciate that you've joined us today. We're now going to open it up to Q&A. And I'll pass it back to you, Hadea. But thank you all for joining us.
Great. And that's exactly right, Dana. We have a poll that we've currently launched to find out what topics would be of most value and interest to you. Also, I just wanted to draw your attention over to the chat. We still have a few people who are joining us late. I went ahead and I put the link to sign up for our mailing list. The webinar presentation, as well as the actual slides, are going to be available to you after this presentation is over. If you'd like to get it directly to your email box, make sure you click that first link in the chat. And then also, Trudy was kind enough to give us handouts specifically for this webinar, and we went ahead and put it up on our website. That's the second link that you'll find just below that, with some other helpful details and hints. And then the second thing is that if you're interested in hearing more about supported living services, and Trudy for sure has been the most gracious presenter today, we'd love to have her back and do a part 2. So feel free to drop comments like that or questions like that in either our chat or our Q&A. For this Q&A, we're going to have our executive director, Dana Hooper and Trudy Grable, join us to answer all of your questions now. We'll have the poll still going for a couple more minutes. And again, I want to invite you, if you're interested in the webinar or any of the slides, again, go ahead and click the chat button down and below on your panel, and we'll be able to send it over to you through that first link that I put out there. So without further ado, let's see if I can get our Q&A going. I'm going to stop the poll in about, another 30 seconds. And let's see. Well, we've got a lot of questions coming in. Let's see. Minimize that. My Q&A is not coming up. Okay, so first question is coming from Gopal, and he wants to know any openings in LSA or SLS homes. So Dave, do you want to answer that, whether LSA has any SLS homes, and are there openings right now?
So just to clarify, LSA is not a supported living service provider. This is a model that works well and can work for your son or daughter. LSA is a residential care provider, and we do have, we're in the process of opening 2 new homes. So there are some openings, but they're not under supported living. They're under adult residential care.
Great. And then Karen wants to know, Trudy, on the A to-do list in the handout, what did you mean by set up a corporation?
I think that was a leftover from a handout, so forgive me for not removing that. I do trainings for families on how to set up your own supported living agency, so I think it was just a remnant from that. And as you know, parents can be vendored, as I am. So my apologies, you do not need to set up a corporation. Just cross that line off.
Okay, so it looks like there's another question, and I want to encourage everybody to put their questions in the Q&A as opposed to the chat, because I'll switch off of this in just a moment. Is there a training seminar for that? Karen wants to know.
I have not done one for a few years, but if there's a great deal of interest, you can email me to trudy@php.com and I'll explore setting that up.
Okay. And again, this is our information for you to reach out, trudy@php.com, and I'm Hadia, and I'm at hfain@lsahomes.org for any follow-up questions. Let's go ahead and end our poll. Thank everyone for responding. We'll have another poll that we put out there, and we just want to know from you whether or not you're looking for either of these services that both Trudy talked about today or LSA. And with that being said, let's see if I can get a question.
Hadia, could I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Trudy, if I was a parent and I was interested in exploring supported living, how would I find a supported living provider?
Typically, you discuss it with your regional center service coordinator, and then they identify agencies who are able to take new clients. If you know somebody who has a child in supported living, and you want to talk to them and ask them, can you hook me up with this agency so I can ask some questions and learn about it? I would encourage that to see what agency is going to work best for your son or daughter. They all have different approaches, so I would always check it out.
Great, thank you.
Great. So with that, the first question comes with who shortlists and recruits potential staff, support staff, and who makes the final decision on recruiting and firing the staff? what kind of staff supervision does the SLS agency do?
The supervision is kind of one apart, because typically you are working with an individual one-to-one in a supported living agency. And so there's training, there's getting to know the client, but ultimately it's the person who says yay or nay. I want this staff or I don't want this staff. The staff can let that person go just like they can in IHSS. However, they might just be unhappy that day and don't want that person around that day. So problem solving is always important, and gaining support and decision making from people that that individual trusts and loves, to have conversations and try to work through issues. But I never let anyone work with my daughter until I interviewed them. And the supported living agencies will try to recruit staff for you. But your child and you should meet them before they're working with your child alone. So that's how I did it. Nobody was going to work with my daughter until I met them.
Great. And then the next question is, our child is very challenging, not being abused by someone who loses their cool. Our child is very challenging, not being abused by someone who loses their cool is the baseline goal. Do you want to comment to that?
Yeah, I'm going to guess that it's you're worried about abuse for your on your child, because the staff either hasn't been adequately trained or slips up every now and then. And you know, I've heard of it. We see it on television where somebody gets hit or pushed down who receives services, and so that is always the question, right? How do we make sure that our son or daughter is not being abused? We have to look for changes in their behavior, their willingness or resistance to be around that person. If you see a lot of changes in your child's behavior when that person's around, that's an indication that something's wrong and you might want to further investigate that. So I wish I had a really good answer for that, where I could guarantee you that somebody won't be abused, but there's no guarantees. But I think providing the supporter with as much information as you have to help them support your child in the way that works for them is going to reduce the risk of that. That's all I got.
This one says, my daughter is severely disabled, CP, deaf, and communication is a huge hindrance for her. Is there a supported living, especially for deaf, disabled adults, that I think this is where she'll thrive?
There is a service for disabled deaf adults in the East Bay. And the name escapes me right now. It's Deaf Plus, DEAFPLUS. So you can Google that. And it's an agency that was started by a former colleague of mine because her daughter is deaf. So I hope that helps.
Great. And if you just bear with us, ladies and gentlemen, we have just a few more questions. And we're right up at that 10-minute mark, but I want to make sure that everyone who asks a question gets a question. So I'll jump around for a moment. Can parents set up their own group home?
I don't think so.
So I'll also answer that. It's possible, but it's very difficult. It takes a lot of resources. It takes a lot of time, and I've offered several. My previous webinar was basically what it takes to open a group home, and most people come to the conclusion that Trudy just came to. It's probably not for most people. It's just not practical. I would also comment here as a parent, and I'm a parent of a son who has disabilities and actually lives in supported living. And Trudy can also comment on this because she started her own supported living agency. These are both have a lot of advantages, but are difficult to do in such a way that they sustain themselves past your own limited lifespan. And for most of us, the goal is to set it up in such a way that this will be a legacy for your son or daughter that will not depend, will depend on as little as possible from your own ongoing support.
Someone asked, can a person receive SLS when living in an LSA home as well as IHSS living in an LSA home?
The answer is no. First of all, IHSS is specifically a program to support someone living in their own home. And in their own home is the key words. And supported living is also specifically geared to supporting them in their own home. The model's a little different in a adult residential facility. The home, food, utilities, the support that someone needed is all essentially bundled together. And so that bundle, can't be separated out, although it does not preclude, and we encourage people to participate in a day program or of their choice.
That's a great answer to this question. And I think Jerry also says, how do we get a regional center to help find, set up, and help attend social events? Our daughter has no activity other than family now, and she is high functioning.
I don't know. Am I muted? Let's see. No. Well, Jerry, we've known each other for a long time. And I think you have to find it based on what her interests are. Meetup has a lot of groups, and of course now we're not meeting live, but if she's interested in photography, you'd find a meetup for photography. And hopefully she would gain a circle of people who become involved and care about her. So it's not going to just happen. It's not something regional center can do for us. It's something that, we kind of have to take by the horns and plow in and see what opportunities exist in therapeutic rec or other recreation programs and hope it sticks. But there's no formalized service for that I'm aware.
Great. There's another question about, this person would like to know about parent vendored SLS. Is it a lot of work and how to go about it? So Trudy, do you want to answer that one?
It is a fair amount of work. I've been doing it for 13 years and I have to do payroll. I have to do the IHSS. I have to do scheduling. I have to pay the tax out of, the administrative rate. I get paid a whole $50 a week as an officer of the corporation because you have to make money to keep your corporation. But it's a fair amount of work, but I felt like I was doing that work anyway. I felt like I was working to find the staff so that there were staff that I felt comfortable being with her, training them, and then trying to merge my style with an agency and what my hopes and visions were. It was difficult sometimes, which is why I finally said, well, I feel like I'm doing so much already, I should just do it myself. So I did. And here I am 13 years later, still doing it. But as I get closer to retirement, which is really not all that far away, is I'm working with another agency to transition our team to that agency so that I'm not the end all. So, because if something happens to me, I am the agency. And so I think that that's something we need to think about in the future for our sons and daughters, is we're not always going to be here.
Okay. So Mina wants to know, can she contact you about the parent vendor? And will she be able to mentor me? My son is also selected as SDP. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. And self-determination provides a lot of different options. Email me, trudy@php.com, and I'll be happy to let you know when I can set that up for you. I also have some other tools on our website. It's journeyofchoice.com.
Great. Someone wants to know, she says, thanks, Trudy. And she says, someone wants to know, how is the rent amount determined? Who pays the rent? And how are the number of supported hours determined?
The rent is paid by the SSI or SSDI, whatever the person is receiving. And that's what makes it really a struggle for supported living in this community, is the rents are so high that it makes it almost unattainable for somebody who doesn't have a Section 8 or affordable housing, unless they're in a sharing environment. And you have to be careful if you have supported living and you have 6 people in a home, it's a group home basically, and they will view it as such. So you can't turn the supported living into a group home. But if they have 1 or 2 roommates, which, you know, most young people do, especially in this county, then it's a different situation, and you pool the resources. You can also use an ABLE account to help pay for the rent, but Regional Center is not going to fund any part of that.
Great. And we're just about at time now. I want to make sure that these questions get answered. So we'll go a little longer today. If you have to leave, again, we're recording. But I really want to give, if Trudy's willing and Dana are willing, I really want to give the people who are asking questions an opportunity to get the help that they need, or at least be pointed in the right direction. So if you have to leave with us right now, thank you so much for joining us. I'm just launching one last poll for today. And it's really to just get your feedback about how knowledgeable you feel about supported living services. We want to know, should we do this again? Did we cover all our bases? And we'll continue answering questions until we have extinguished what's in our open questions. But if you have to go, thank you again for joining us. And it also will be recorded. If you've hit the link in the chat, you'll be able to get the messages. Thank you. So continuing on now, someone asked, what is the relationship between IHSS hours awarded and SLS hours given?
The difference is, one, pay. IHSS pays $14.66 an hour right now. It does not pay minimum wage for our county, and they don't care because it's a state and county funds. Regional Center funds the rest of the time if there's no natural supports. And so your person will have 24/7 coverage if that's what they need. What was the last part of that question, Adia?
It was, oh my, look, I've lost it.
Okay, I think I remembered now. So what the difference is. So,
oh, the difference between IHS and SLS, yes.
So you can have in-home support services, and they can be managed by the supported living agency, or they can ask the family to manage that. They are 2 separate entities that live in different houses, but they share the supports of that person.
And I'd like to add one other thing, that the Regional Center will look at how many hours is required in total and basically subtract the hours that are supplied by IHSS, and they will vendor the supported living provider for those hours on your behalf. So the whole picture is the supports that are provided between those two programs.
I have a question. Does that answer this question from Karen that says, for IHSS hours, how are the hours dedicated to SLS? And then she asks, will all the IHSS hours go to the SLS provider under all conditions?
No, the supported living agency really has no obligation to IHSS. I think, Dana, you might speak to that, how you have your arrangements with the SLS provider, but the supported living agency does not get the IHSS hours. Your individual gets the IHSS hours. You'll notice when at the end of the year, a W-2 comes to you from your child,
Yes.
not from your agency. So they're very separate.
Yes, and I guess further depending on the situation, your son or daughter's IHSS worker may also be employed by the supported living vendor, but it is separate and they are separately paid through that IHSS system, and their employer of record is your son or daughter. So it takes a little while to kind of wrap your mind around the fact that your son or daughter is the boss. And they, not only do they, are they the boss here, they get to choose their IHSS workers, and you may help them, but process their payroll by reviewing their hours.
Yeah. The system does not make it easy for us as parents to sort out all of the complexities of the systems that our children benefit from, which is why PHP exists. So you can always call PHP if you're very confused after this, because I may have left some of you more confused than when you began because of the complexity of the combination of supports that someone receives.
Right. And I guess contrasting it back to residential care facility is basically the provider has to worry about all of it.
Yeah.
Right. It's their problem, to pay the rent. It's their problem to hire and manage and train the staff. It doesn't mean that these aren't equally complex issues, but it's a little bit more of the one-stop shopping versus the basically the design of a customized service plan for your son or daughter, and that's what I think of as supported living. So it's contrast the two.
Great. We're going to shift gears for a second. We're going to answer a few other questions, and we'll pop back to some of the more SLS related questions. One attendee wants to know, what is possible in terms of cameras and remote monitoring?
Well, I could speak within LSA homes. We're not a big believers in cameras and monitoring. The only time we've ever done that is we've monitored the front door when we had some problems from the neighborhood vandals, and there was a concern on the part of the staff about their own safety coming and going. I would also say the same thing if as a parent about cameras and monitoring in my son's home and under supported living. Trudy, I mean, your thoughts on that?
My belief, and I can't quote me because I'm not certain, is that it's not commonly done, and it may not even be legal. I can't speak to that right now. I think Ann Sieber at Regional Center would be the person to ask.
So there's someone, and it just got upvoted, who asked, is SLS a good option for an individual that doesn't appear to be able to make their own choices, i.e. severely autistic?
It might be a good choice for them,
Yeah.
largely because it's an individualized program. If they're sensitive to sound, if other people really trigger them, it might be the best solution. And I do know people who have a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 staff with 1 client, because of the severe needs of that client. So it certainly is an option, and yeah, but it's a challenge to get the 2-to-1. You really have to prove that, as with everything else we have to do.
Someone's asking, how do you manage unexpected staff availability? This is a good one, and it's been upvoted as well. So how do you manage unexpected staff availability?
So people calling in sick and such?
Unavailability, yes, unavailability.
Well, I tend to cover frequently. I don't want sick people coming to work. And so I'll often cover a shift or call in someone else if possible. It is the responsibility of that supported living agency to provide the service. And so they, if I was managing services for your son or daughter, and I'm the end all agency person, right? And I can't find anybody to go stay with your child, and I'm the person, I'm going to stay with your child, which is why I never accepted other clients, because I got enough with my own daughter. I don't want to have to come stay with your children. Not that I don't like them, I just have enough to do. So they eventually, somebody has to come and do the shift, or they have to pay overtime to somebody to stay, which is really hard on agencies because they don't even get reimbursed enough to pay overtime. So it's a real challenge for agencies to have to do that. And I always told people, if someone calls in sick, call me first, because Lauren did not do well with the change in staffing or a surprise like many of our kids don't. So I always wanted to have the option of covering the shift to help prevent chaos.
I think we all hate surprises.
Yeah,
Well,
and the same is really true for LSA and its homes. It's expected, we try and deal with it also by having per diem or on-call staff that can be called in an instant like that. So, if overtime doesn't work and if someone's not available on a per diem basis, typically the administrator is the first one in. And if it kept escalating, it'd come to me and I'd be in. If it really was a difficult situation, you might call the parent to help out, but it's the agency's responsibility to provide that service, and it's taken very, very seriously.
great. So this one's been upvoted twice. It says, if my son lives at home and rent a room from us, will he be able to apply for supported living?
No, he has to be, well, he can apply, but he won't get it until he's in his own home.
Okay, and then this one is SLS a reasonable option for someone who would need support staff during all hours they are home?
Yes.
Okay. Can you share about using ADU for a home for our child?
I can. My daughter was at a separate location for many, many years, and about 1.5 years ago, I converted my home into 2 flats. So she has her own place downstairs with her own entrance and exit and a door that locks And so we now do have an ADU, and the ADU requirements for counties and cities have all relaxed because of the housing crisis in Santa Clara County. But there are some specific things that have to be in place for that to happen. And I actually called DDS and talked to the community person to make sure I got it right before I did it. So the answer is yes, they have to have their own exit and entrance, and it has to be separate.
Great. So there's another question.
It's an ADU, accessory dwelling unit, before we go on.
Candace would love to learn more about developing that circle of friends and support.
You can start with the BFF. That we're doing it online now, but it really is going, there's nobody that's going to do that for you. It really takes effort on the parents' part. I have always looked at what Lauren's needs were, and if it didn't exist, I developed it, which is why we have the BFF. And she had a lot of friends. We didn't need to make more friends, but you can always use more friends. But so many families asked me about helping their child get the social life that my daughter experienced. And one day it just came to me, and it's like, okay, I'll do it. And so, you just have to access what's out there. You're going to have to arrange get-togethers for your son and daughter, provide transportation, make sure they have enough money. We as parents can't be passive and hope that somebody's going to do it for us or for our child. We just have to get out there and do it as to the best that you can. Some people are working 2 jobs and they can't do it. They just don't have the physical ability. And you might be able to get involved with a place of worship. So there are options. I think that might be a great webinar to have is, brainstorming ideas for how to create friendships for our sons and daughters. I wish I had a better answer. I wish I could, just give you a book and say, here's how, but it doesn't exist.
Socio-emotional help and support is very important to audience members, both from this webinar and past webinars. And before we got started, we got a lot of questions about that. So yeah, I would love to explore that topic and see how it could be helpful for a lot of audience, for sure.
Lisa just reminded me about Al Condalucci. I would look at chat and look for his name and Google him. He's a brilliant person for helping to create community for people and social capital, as he calls it.
Great, that's awesome. So we just have a few more questions here. One is very specific for IHSS, and it's asking about that with SLS, the provider level. So it says, if you have maximum level of IHSS hours, is that a problem for an SLS provider level if SLS reimbursement is then based on fewer SLS rate hours?
It could be for some agencies. They may say, we don't want to deal with IHSS. Each agency makes their own rules, basically, as long as they're following Title 17. It is, it's tough. It's up to them. And so, and my brain just had a freeze. Can you remind me the other part of that, Hidayah? I'm getting old, that happens.
Okay, let me see if I can find it. Okay, it says, if you have a maximum level of IHSS hours, is that a problem for an SLS provider level if the SLS reimbursement is then based on fewer SLS rate hours?
Like I said, it might be. Most agencies, most people in supported living get IHSS, and they have agencies who are providing their services. So it really is going to depend on the agency itself, but I think that most agencies deal with it And while it's not a positive factor for them financially, they all seem to manage it somehow. I hope that helps.
Okay. And then what kind of person is best fit for an LSA home? We get this question a lot. I.e., what type of functioning disabilities?
Well, there's probably two parts to that question. The way residential programs are set up is they are set up to support individuals at a level. And so that does have some bearing on who would be appropriate. But I think there's no easy answer to that. I've seen in LSA homes individuals that are again, to me would appear to be quite high functioning in terms of they need limited amount of help with daily living. They are quite able. They don't need a lot of supervision to keep them health and safety, all the way to the gamut in some homes where you would say, oh, those individuals need almost 100% help with daily living. And they're very immobile. And so I don't think there's any easy answer to that. I would also say that at a lot of times the environment of having for roommates and multiple staff, do fit well with people who are more social or want to be more socially involved. And sometimes supported living seems to work better with, and I'll use my son as an example, who, and it may not be true now, but at one point I would say, he does better in an environment where there aren't too many moving pieces and too many people around and too much going on. Whereas in a home with 4-5 roommates, I've seen people that tended to stay on their own and spend all their time in their own bedroom become drawn out to become more and more involved with others and doing things and more social and spend less time in their room. So there's no simple answer to the question, but and I believe it's worth exploring for most individuals. You'd want to explore both models thoroughly before coming to the conclusion that one is best for your son or daughter.
Great. So we have the last question, and we're just about 20 minutes over time. So I want to thank everyone who's stuck around for their patience. This one says, who plays the role of the parent or family in supervising the SLS setup for those who don't have any family?
Typically, it would be the regional center is going to monitor and ask the person, if you're in supported living, you have a quarterly meeting with the service coordinator, and that person is to find out if you're happy, if you're comfortable with your staff, if you want any changes to your services, and so they monitor. But there's also a supervisor over the people who are providing the direct services. There is a group called Good Shepherd Fund, and they can provide people as conservators, and will check on the individual and make sure, just like the service coordinator at regional center, they would send in a social worker and make sure that things are going well for the person. So, but a lot of people don't have families, and they don't have as much advocacy as a result, and which is unfortunate. So as much as we can do to help our sons and daughters be their own advocate and be willing to speak up for themselves, the better off they're going to be in the long run.
And there's 3 other groups that would also fill that role depending on the situation. One is IHSS will do a periodic visit
Once a year.
once a year. If your son or daughter is conserved, the court will visit from time to time. And then the third one is if you are son or daughter qualifies for any of the housing subsidies or programs like Section 8, they will come out and do a full-on inspection to make sure. So those are more once a year or once every few years, but there are people who are charged with looking in on that and trying to be sure that there isn't fraud going on, if nothing else, and that individual is in fact safe and being provided those services that the state or county is paying for.
There's also the State Council on Developmental Disability that can sometimes be an advocate for the person, or the client's rights advocate every regional center has, but that assumes that the person is able to call one of those agencies for assistance.
Right, which is I think for a lot of parents one of the issues. If you have a son or daughter who's not able to make that phone call or not able to express in words, what's going on.
Yeah. It's a scary thing for us as parents. You're not alone in that worry.
So Trudy and Dana, I want to thank you again for joining us. We've answered so many questions. And I think that a lot of people who are reaching out have gotten a lot of answers. Of course, we're going to be putting this up again on the website, and we're also going to be sharing the slides. I'd also like to encourage everyone who joined and still on, and if you have more questions, to send your questions either to trudy@php.com, or you can send it to myself at hfain@php.com. And then Dana, his email is dhooper, that's DHOOPER @lsahomes.org. And I think I said that right. Mine is hfain@lsahomes.org. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And of course, you can join us for our next webinar just by clicking the link in the chat. And I hope that all of you have a wonderful day. Thank you, Trudy. Thank you, Dana.
Thanks, Trudy.
Thanks for the invite.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Well.